Have you ever stopped to think about one of the most incredible stories ever told? It's the story of you, of me, of every single person. It's how a single, tiny cell embarks on this epic 9-month journey to build a human being. It's a tale of perfect timing and amazing biological engineering. So let's dive right in.
So, this is the big question, right? How on earth does it happen? How does that very first cell just know what to do? How does it know how to divide and transform and build something as complex as a heart or a brain? Well, that's the mystery we're going to unravel today.
And here's our game plan. First, we'll check out life's starting lineup, the biological factories, if you will. Then, we'll get into the haploid mission, which is all about crafting the perfect building blocks. After that, we'll look at the 28-day countdown, this amazing hormonal clock. Then, we'll follow the journey from cell to fetus. And finally, we'll touch on some cool variations, like how twins happen.
Okay, first things first. Before this incredible journey can even begin, we need to meet the key players. We've got to understand the fundamental hardware, the actual factories that produce all the essential parts.
So, let's start with the female system, which is basically designed from the ground up to be the ultimate nursery. It all begins in the ovaries, right? They're the ones producing the eggs and also the critical hormones that get the whole system ready. Once an egg is released, it takes a trip down the fallopian tube, which is like a highway leading to the uterus. And the uterus, well, it's this incredibly powerful organ that prepares itself every single month just in case it needs to become a home for a new life. Now, if the female system is the nursery, the male system is all about mass production and delivery. You've got the testes, which are basically these non-stop factories churning out millions of sperm along with testosterone. But the sperm don't travel alone. They get mixed with these special fluids that nourish them and give them the fuel they need for the long and difficult journey ahead.
All right, so we've seen the hardware. Now let's zoom in, way in, down to the cellular level. How are these super important reproductive cells, the sperm and the egg, actually made? This, my friends, is where the real magic starts.
The official term for this whole process is gametogenesis. And the most important word to remember here is haploid. It's a fancy way of saying that these special cells, the gametes, are created with only half the normal amount of genetic information.
Which, might sound a little weird at first. Why would you want a building block that only has half of the instruction manual? Well, it turns out that's the secret ingredient for the whole recipe of sexual reproduction.
It's really a beautifully simple piece of biological math. You take one cell with half the DNA from one parent and another cell with half the DNA from the other parent, and when they fuse together, boom, the new cell, called a zygote, has a complete, full set of chromosomes. It's the perfect genetic mashup.
And what's fascinating is how differently these two types of cells are made. Just look at this. Spermatogenesis is like an assembly line. It's continuous from puberty onwards, and it makes 4 working sperm cells every time. But oogenesis, that's a whole different ballgame. It makes only 1 viable egg. And get this, the process actually starts before a female is even born. Then it hits pause for years and only finishes the very last step if and when fertilization actually happens. Just wild. Okay, so we've got our factories and we've got our building blocks, but for any of this to work, the timing has to be, well, perfect, absolutely perfect. And that perfect timing is run by this incredibly precise 28-day hormonal clock.
And you can see that clockwork right here. It's like a hormonal symphony. In the first part of the cycle, you have hormones like FSH and estrogen working together to grow the egg and build up the lining of the uterus. Then, right in the middle, you get this massive surge of another hormone, LH, which is the big trigger. And for the rest of the cycle, progesterone takes the lead, keeping that uterine lining perfectly plush and ready just in case. Yeah, all that hormonal back and forth, all that preparation, it all builds up to this one single critical moment. Around day 14, you get ovulation. This is it. This is when the egg is finally released from the ovary, opening up a very, very small window of opportunity for fertilization to happen. So what happens if that window of opportunity is met? What happens when a sperm meets the egg at just the right time? Well, the whole operation shifts gears. It goes from preparation mode to full-on construction mode. The 9-month project has begun. And that first week is just a whirlwind. It's incredible. Right after fertilization, the new cell starts dividing. It goes from 1 cell to 2, then it becomes a solid little ball of cells, then a hollow ball, all while it's traveling down the fallopian tube. And then, about a week later, this tiny little structure burrows into the wall of the uterus. It has arrived at its new home. As soon as it's implanted, this amazing temporary organ starts to form, the placenta. You can think of it as the fetus's personal, all-in-one life support system. It connects to the fetus through the umbilical cord, and it's the place where all the good stuff, like nutrients and oxygen, gets passed from the mother, and all the waste goes back out. It even takes over hormone production to keep the pregnancy going strong. Now here's something really important to understand. The mother's blood and the fetus's blood never actually mix. They get incredibly close in the placenta, but they're separated by a thin barrier. And this barrier is absolutely crucial. It protects the delicate fetus from the mother's much higher blood pressure, it prevents problems that their blood types don't match, and it acts like a bouncer, blocking a lot of bacteria and other nasty stuff from getting through.
But, and this is a really big but, that barrier isn't a perfect fortress. Some things are small enough to sneak across it. We're talking about certain viruses, alcohol, nicotine, other drugs, and that's exactly why those things can be so incredibly dangerous during pregnancy.
So what we've just walked through is the standard blueprint for creating one new person. But, biology loves to play with the recipe. So in this last section, let's look at some of the variations, like twins, and the pattern of growth that continues long after the 9 months are over.
This slide lays out the difference perfectly. On one hand, you have identical twins. This happens when a single fertilized egg, for some reason, splits into two. The result is two individuals with the exact same DNA, and they usually share one placenta. Then you have fraternal twins. That's a totally different scenario where two separate eggs get fertilized by two separate sperm. They're basically just siblings who happen to be born at the same time, and they each get their own placenta.
And of course, the journey doesn't end at birth. After that, human growth follows this very classic S-shaped curve. You get a relatively slow start as an infant, then you hit that crazy rapid growth spurt in childhood and the teen years. And finally, things level off in the stationary phase as we reach our full adult size.
And this quote really just sums up the entire story, doesn't it? From that very first cell division all the way to our final height, growth is this constant, unstoppable process. It's an increase in everything. More cells, bigger cells, turning that initial blueprint into a fully formed being.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, from the hormonal clock that has to be timed to perfection, to a single cell that holds the entire genetic blueprint, it's just staggering. It's an absolutely beautiful, intricate biological dance. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What part of it all is most amazing to you? The cellular mission, the hormonal symphony, or the 9-month construction project? Thanks for tuning in.